the name of the values that keep you alive, do not let your vision of man be distorted by the ugly, the cowardly, the mindless, and those who have never achieved his title. Do not lose your knowledge that man's proper estate is an upright posture, an intransigent mind, and a step that travels on limited roads. Do not let your fire go out. Spark might replace the spark, and the hopeless swamps of the approximate, the not quite, the not yet, the not at all. The world you desired can be won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It's yours.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Crypto Economy Podcast. I'm here with Will. Will, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And our guest today is Chris Garner. So Chris is the CMO of Oyster Protocol. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Hi guys, yeah, thanks for having me on.
He's tuning in from all the way over in Australia. So
Yeah, sunny Australia.
yeah,
You're in
so
Sydney
we're
right
happy
now, or-
we finally
You're in Sydney right now, right?
is
Yeah, I'm in Sydney. Yeah, we've got
Awesome.
a couple of our team over in Sydney, but we're really quite remote. People in Canada, Germany, and North America mostly. But yeah, we're very diverse in terms of our locations.
I mean, that's what's cool about cryptocurrencies is you have these truly global organizations because it's all over the place. It doesn't really matter where you are because the market is truly international. And so it's interesting to talk to people from all over the world about this stuff, and it's great to get opinions from people in other countries. I think you're the first person we've had thus far that's outside of the US. So
Oh, cool.
we're excited for that.
Yes.
So just sort of jumping into things, I wanted to first maybe briefly touch upon some of your past experience before Oyster, because I think it's really
Okay.
interesting to see how people make the jump from, traditional industry into crypto. It seems like there's always an interesting story there as to how people get caught up in it. And I like to hear about, how they
Yeah.
view the industry and how they view it differently from what they've seen in the past.
Yeah, so my background is marketing and advertising, specifically in the digital space. I started long before Google AdWords was invented, and in fact, Alta Vista was probably the largest search engine at the time when I got into the space. What happened was working as a graphic designer and web designer at the time. There were a lot of in the dot-com boom and bust in year 2000, there were a lot of redundancies, and there was some new technology being touted around with respect to tracking and technology, in which was born, affiliate marketing, which Amazon and eBay, the two huge companies, have grown really on the back of. So affiliate marketing is basically paying someone a percentage of a sale if they are responsible for the last click in that customer journey. So, I think it was initially out of the sex industry this kind of technology came about, but then it was soon harnessed by Jeff Bezos, where he could get people to write analysis of books and reviews of books, and then those guys could put in some hyperlinks, and if people click those links, he could track that back through to a sale and then pay those publishers and the review sites a percentage commission. And so I worked with the first performance marketing company in the UK, and helped grow that significantly from 2000 to 2005. And it really was, I'd say exponential growth. So we grew that company to be worth about £60 million and put that on the alternative investment market in the UK. And what's fascinating was that every brand jumped on board really quite quickly, specifically in the UK. But there was still, from my view, it was rife for gamification. So, everyone knows that just because you're the last click in the customer journey doesn't mean to say that you are responsible in any way other than that last click for driving that user. And one thing that technology can never really control is word of mouth sentiment. So, and word of mouth is the most powerful, persuasive tool that marketers can potentially use but can't measure. So, there's a whole issue within the ad tech space with the way that tracking works. And then, of course, if it's able to be based on just the last click on, then we can move on forwards with more attribution models in multiple clicks. There are still rogue agents out there that are able to manipulate clicks, create poor content and clickbait, and also use a variety of ad fraud methodologies like cookie stuffing, which we could go into a little deeper as well, that can essentially take money from advertisers and generate revenue for themselves. So yeah, I helped grow that company significantly. Then I moved into Australia in around about 2008 and did the same sort of thing here too. So working for large agencies, WPP and MEC, where we were doing, hundreds of millions of dollars of ad spend through Google and through Facebook. Yeah, there's so much money going through those channels. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So that's a
Yeah,
little bit of my early days for sure.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, it's interesting. Everyone now has shifted to the model where they really do want excellent data on all of their ad spend because all of it seems to be available. But it seems like a lot of big companies have moved away from physical advertisement, like billboards, for example, are probably one of the best values out in the marketing space right now because, a lot of big companies can't quantify their results, and so they tend to stray away from them, especially the people who are responsible for showing that data to whoever's next up the chain.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But
one area, billboards, because digital out of home is actually getting more sophisticated. So, TV and digital out of home are perhaps the only traditional channels that aren't seeing rapid market share decline. I mean, TV still is a very great mass media tool, and it does drive. I mean, we've done so many studies on this that TV advertising drives brand search significantly, but yet the people that benefit from that is Google. And whilst Google, I think 80% of Google's revenue comes from literally AdWords, I would say almost half of that is probably brands bidding on their own brand terms. So, which
Yeah.
is unbelievable if you think about it in terms of how much money that really is. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Just because that digital has been able to measure something doesn't mean it's really should be attributed to everything. And I think some of the decisions that are being made by marketers and advertising companies now are not based on common sense. They're just
Yeah.
looking at the data, and the data's gamified. I mean, we live in a world where 20% of all digital ads aren't even seen.
Yeah.
So and if you're not seeing an ad, there can't be any brand value in it at all, and thus, but yet they still take credit, dropping hundreds of millions of cookies on people's machines. And some rogue agents are able to make significant amounts of money, and the advertisers and the Interactive Advertising Bureau, they can't do anything about it. The people that are creating these ad fraud tools are way more sophisticated than the ad tech companies that they're gamifying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen, an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad for a product that, I had just bought or I'd owned, for months prior. And so it's pretty clear that they aren't really targeting prospective customers. They're lazy in a lot of ways, willing to just, slap ads onto existing customers, and the metrics they're using are fairly simple as far as how they're targeting people, but I don't think they're honest as far as how they're, I guess, articulating that to their clients. They're not letting them know, where these ads really are when you click the button for third-party, advertising affiliates or third-party platforms within Facebook, and they'll put it on some, random websites or with, just like Google AdWords. But you never know where those are going to end up.
No. I mean, a lot of the programmatic advertising through ad exchanges now that, contributes a large portion of the banners that we see outside of Facebook, on publishers' sites. There's absolutely no transparency whatsoever. So, whereas your ad could appear on a premium site at the same value, it could appear on a sort of torrent site or a peer-to-peer sharing site. And as an advertiser, you've got no real control of that. P&G, one of the biggest advertisers globally, they have no idea where their ad money is being spent, and they talk about trying to get transparency from the media agencies. But the point is, some of the publishers that have this inventory that is able to gamify it, they're not willing to share it, and they're able to make significant amounts of money. So if you do have premium quality content, doesn't mean you're going to get premium quality revenue for your advertising, because there's a lot of non-premium content that's generating significant views, whether that be on porn sites or on other torrent sites, that there's absolutely no control. So yeah, it's a very strange ecosystem. There's lots of different lobbying by Google and Facebook as well to try to get more and more revenue into their ecosystem. And the fact that those two companies are so big right now that literally they're taking about 80 to 90% of all digital ad spend right now goes through those two companies. So the 10 or 20% that's actually left over for all the other publishers, and that's CNN, the BBC, the Guardian, quality publishers in some respect, they're fighting for that 10%. And within that 10%, 20% of it is fraud as well. So, they're going to struggle to pay for quality journalists, and you're seeing that they're asking for donation as well as they're struggling against ad block. I mean, at the end of the day, users don't even like the ads that they're having to see, or they're having to click through or wait 5 seconds to view as well. I mean, the users are getting the poorest experience, because if you go to some of these sites to read content, you're bombarded by these ads, and then you don't know whether the content is written biased to generate eyeballs, to generate revenue, or whether it's quality or not. And so now we're seeing popularity versus the truth being played out, where popularity is way more believed by users than what can be as quality journalism. So it's a significant problem. And I always think back to the invention of the internet, and luminaries like Sir Tim Berners-Lee. They talk about the fact that if the only way the internet can remain free is through advertising, then the whole ecosystem of the internet is broken. And I personally live online. I've been living online for the last 20 years. I don't want to see this fast race to the bottom with poorer and poorer content. I mean, celebrity content creating most of the revenue for both publishers and advertisers. It's not improving, it's socially degrading society as well. So, there's multiple issues with the way that the ad industry is monopolizing revenue in the internet. And I think that's really where Oyster Protocol comes in, to try to give an alternative for publishers to generate revenue outside of putting ads on their sites. And, from what we've seen from some of the sites, they're so happy to not push ads. And then in the same token, end users, I think there's 600 million end users right now using ad block, which represents about 10% of between 10 and 20% of all internet users. That's a huge amount of people that are already saying, no, we don't want any more ads. But that doesn't actually help the ecosystem either, because when you block the ad, that means that the publisher doesn't get any revenue, so they're having to then scrape harder and harder to generate revenue. It is a fast race to the bottom, and we're hopeful that if we can scale Oyster Protocol, we can offer an alternative revenue stream for publishers, and they can focus on what they want, which is creating content and creating meaningful relationship with users, not just bombarding them with ads and offers.
So my question is, do you think that the internet or any sort of peer-to-peer system like the internet, or at least on a grander scale, is predicated on the advertising model like it is now? Or do you think that in order to fix it, rather, you'd have to develop something completely new like Internet 3.0? So, and then
Well,
furthermore, what's Oyster's kind of mission, and then what's the kind of like the one-page white sheet on how you guys are looking to resolve that?
yes, um, I think that there needs to be investment from companies like ourselves in creating new revenue streams for advertisers. So, one of the best ones I think at the moment is Steam. Some micropayment service for content. You push out content, and publishers and content creators can generate revenue, but it's still a donation base, so it's almost, it's asking rather than
Yeah.
guaranteeing revenue. I think looking at all of the blockchain technologies and different technologies in the crypto space, we're the only one that's really going about offering an alternative payment mechanism for public. There are different ones that are offering different ways of advertising, which again is still pushing a message into people's faces, telling them to do something or manipulating them to do something that they may or may not want to do. Whereas, Steam is actually providing a payment gateway, a micropayment gateway, and I think the Oyster protocol, is offering the same sort of thing. It's saying, hey, if you take the protocol as a publisher, we can then try to pay you revenue in Pearl, our token, and you can stop using ads. You might be able to then create a different type of content on your site, like long-form content, much more deeper level of journalism, better. Not just clickbait like you see with BuzzFeed and all these other terrible media outlets that just the actual depth in their content is very shallow.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're basically just getting rid of that entire jumbled web of uncertainty between when the ad was created and harvested versus when the user's actually seeing it. And so you have certainty between
we're
those
saying why does if a user wants certain type of information, whether it be news, whether it be how-to, whether it be streaming music, why do they need to see ads at all? I mean, it's a poor experience. The only reason they need to see the ads is so that the publisher can get paid. And if the publisher doesn't get paid, they can't provide the service. And if that publisher doesn't want to push ads because it's degrading the experience of the user, what alternative do they have right now? There's nothing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, sorry to cut you off there, but I was just going to say I wholeheartedly agree with sort of the model you guys are pursuing. So that's something Will and I have talked about a lot, is the alternative of, CPU mining or utilizing the power of your computer to do the work instead of making the person the product. So if you let your computer become the product, and I think really,
Well,
up
hang
until
on.
now,
Let's just,
yes,
there's a
sir.
little difference here. So the Oyster
Sure.
protocol doesn't mine our token on an end user machine. It's not doing
Yeah.
not doing anything like CoinHive or a variety of other types of things. I'll step backwards. The Oyster protocol is a two-sided marketplace. So whilst I'm talking a lot about the content on publishers' websites and user experience, the way that it's actually paid for in terms of running the protocol is that we're offering decentralized anonymous data storage to end users.
Like a Dropbox,
Yeah, like
essentially.
Dropbox, but
Yeah.
way more decentralized. I mean, Dropbox has been attacked on multiple levels, and
It's still
also
centralized, yeah.
yes,
But this
it's
one, they're putting on
centralized.
the
It's
tangle.
not anonymous. And also, if they want, they will give your files over to any government agency that asks for it without your consent as well. So the way that the marketplace would work is, I mean, there's a whole problem there because actually IP, intellectual property by companies, that the fraud in that area, it's not really audited because companies don't want to say when there's only a legal obligation for companies to say when their end user privacy data has been hacked. But say you've got some intellectual property on electric car, motors. If that's stored and then that's been hacked and that's gone to China or some other rogue agent, those companies don't have to say that that IP has been stolen. It's in their best interest not to say that that IP has been stolen, because it would affect their share price, or it would affect their relationship with their board. So apparently in America alone, that's about a $300 billion a year fraudulent activity that's going on. It's unchecked, it's really unmeasured, and you can see how the rate of, the rate of change in certain countries in catching up in intellectual property. How does that happen? No one really knows. Some of the new innovations that are coming out, because the data they're storing has been hacked, they've lost that ability to stay ahead of the curve. So we're trying to offer companies the ability to store data there. What they would do is they would buy our token Pearl to store the data, and it's significantly cheaper than storing it with Dropbox or with another type of data storage provider. Is we're offering them a way to store the data, and it's that fiat money that turns into Pearl that's going to be the incentive for the publisher. So, they will get paid. The flow of money comes from decentralized data storage via the Oyster protocol to website publishers. And the end user, what will happen is when they arrive on the site, there'll be some kind of overlay that says, hey, we're using the Oyster protocol. We're using a tiny fraction of your unused CPU and GPU, much, much lower than, mining. And we're actually storing the data on the IOTA Tangle, which we'll go into in a little bit. So it's in fact that those costs are going to be minimal compared to data mining. And we really want to delineate that ourselves away from that. We won't be mining. The end user will be doing a proof of work on the IOTA Tangle, which is very light and very fast transactional speed. And yeah, it doesn't take huge amounts of electricity and completely slow your computer down and make it render it, almost unusable.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fascinating business model, and I really like the approach, because what I was going to touch upon earlier was what Will was talking about needing sort of this Internet 3.0 to move past some of these ad models. But I think really when they were just developing, a lot of these sites and apps, generally speaking, most of the guys, I think they're more technical. I went to business school, so all we talk about is business models, but it seems like not a lot of people were focused on the business models behind it to facilitate the technology. And I think that's what's cool about cryptos and blockchain, is people are putting a lot more focus into new and innovative business models that make more sense for everyone. And you can do that because of the capabilities that blockchain can give companies in efficiency gains.
Yeah, I mean,
did you have something? Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
I agree with you. I think as well, though, it's the people involved in the space are trying to think differently about the problems that are out there in the world, and trying to solve those problems for the benefit of the end user, rather than for the benefit of a shareholder or a board of directors who, are only looking after their best interests. And you can see that with the decisions that some of these massive media companies, I call Google and Facebook publishers. They're not platforms. They want to keep themselves as platforms so that they don't
Completely
get regulated. Agree. But they are publishers. They need to have control over the content. They need to take responsibility for the content that's being pushed, even if they don't generate it themselves. And thus it's governments, in that sort of sense, they're looking at crypto for regulation. Meanwhile, they're vaguely turning a blind eye, because they cannot control these kind of companies. And these companies have no interest in the quality of the user experience. And so that's no wonder sites like Wikipedia, it doesn't have any ads, but yet it's going to have to ask for donation time and time again, because it can't sustain the huge amount of server costs. Now, we want to offer sites like that over time a different alternative, so that the end user doesn't have to put their hand in their pocket. They're effectively paying for that whole experience with this proof of work on IOTA, and using that redundant a little bit of their device and a little bit of their electricity. That's way easier for users to do than actually donating physical money. And the same with The Guardian. The Guardian, on every article, it's asking for donation to keep up the quality and the independence of the journalist. But I would imagine they get less than 1% conversion when they're asking for donation on that. If we're expecting, 50 to 60% consent when people land on the site, and then automatically there's micropayments going through, and the end user hasn't had to put any money out on the table to do that. They're just paying for it in a small amount of electricity, which will back out over time, be tiny.
I think the journalism angle is really interesting because I think that's one of the things that's been most affected by ad models. The increasingly clickbaity headlines. It's all about, just getting impressions, getting people to click, and then a lot of times within the article they'll contradict the headline, and you'll realize the headline was really just to catch someone's eye. So I guess I'm wondering if your model is sort of based on getting as many users to that page. Do you think it'll help cut down on clickbaity headlines, or do you think they're going to sort of stay with the model they know and just try to convert more users onto your model?
If you think about it, the Oyster protocol worked most effectively when the end user's on the site for a long time. So, therefore,
that makes
streaming
sense,
services, watching video content or music content, you could be on that actively, and you'd be providing a small amount of your electricity, therefore, to the streaming provider, so they could be generating Pearl tokens and getting revenue in that way. But then if you look at journalism in itself, then long-form journalism, it's almost dead online. So you go to the BBC website, and the articles on that site, they take 1 minute to read. This is an institute. I'm very British. This is an institution. It should be providing much more depth within the content. And if they're going to be able to do that, then users are going to stay on that site for longer, generating more revenue for that publisher in the long run. So hopefully it will create a paradigm shift for the sites that take the protocol in the way that they have a relationship with their end user. So, offering them longer form content, giving them video as well, and streaming tools too. That's going to benefit both the end user and also the publisher. And if you think about it now, when you're on Spotify, if you're on the free service, you get those annoying ads every so often.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily, and that cheapens the experience. It either makes you not want to use it anymore, or you think about paying for it. But if you didn't want to pay for it, there's no alternative way for you to access the music without getting the ads. So this hopefully will allow those kind of companies to offer end users a different experience. Now,
they're definitely
or podcasts.
There definitely seems to be huge
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, we're in beta. I think mainnet's coming live today, so we're in beta. So we can give you
perfect timing.
we'll give you our JavaScript code, and we can try it with yourselves as well. Because like you say, every time I'm interacting with it, if I'm listening to a podcast for an hour, I'm actively on that. You could be using the protocol to generate revenue in that way.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think there's huge potential for this on the web, especially as it pertains to journalism, because my friends will send me articles like for the Washington Post or the New York Times or other kind of longer takes, and I'll just the CNN like breaking news, and I'll read one paragraph and it'll just fade away, and it says, pay $14.99 to read the rest of these. Like you've run out of your limitation for the month. And I think that's really, it strikes a huge blow to journalism, because you've got this new medium with really crazy speeds and efficiency and potentially huge user bases, but the financial model for it is really flawed. So I'm glad to hear that you have at least a really viable, solution to that.
Yeah, and I haven't done a survey of all the users, but from the people I speak to, I don't know anyone who doesn't find the ads annoying.
Oh yeah.
It's literally like, if the only way I can get this content for free is to have these annoying ads. So some people are like, I'd just rather pay for it and get these ads away. So, you know,
And Patreon, I think, has proven that to a great extent. People will pay for, content. A lot of lecturers and podcasters, they can make $200,000 a month just from user contributions because they want to support them.
well, yeah, I mean, and again, you've got online learning. So with sites like Udemy, where they've got the courses streamed online, they could be using the protocol as well to make additional revenue for the content providers and the lecturers on that service too. So it really has an unbelievable amount of use cases. It's just how the publishers actually take it. And again, mobile app developers, right? So, I mean, I've got young children. They're constantly downloading the latest free, Clash of the Clans. I mean, that's bombarded with ad after ad after ad.
Yeah.
I've got no real control over what they're seeing, and I'm dismayed at what they're being offered. Fast food, really terrible lifestyle choices, and I've got no control. But they're begging me to play these games. App developers can use the protocol. They wouldn't have to rely on these terrible adverts as well, and they could start generating revenue because obviously your mobile phone can act in the same way too.
So that being said, do you worry about pushback from companies like Google and Apple who are going to end up losing revenue? These guys clearly are not going to be, the ball won't be in your court for them. So
well, look,
why...
those companies. I mean, the digital advertising global spends around $300 billion a year. We're not saying that we're going to scale this and take market share from Apple or Google or Amazon in the short term in terms of advertising because those guys are so big. We're going to offer independent publishers who want to think differently, who are engaging with their users, they understand their audience, that alternative, and hopefully on the back of some of those use cases we'll get momentum and scale and also good publicity. But we really want to be able to make sure that the people that do engage with us can earn at least equivocal revenue as they are doing with advertising without the ads. And I think that's what we're focusing on, in this beta trial, is to make sure that whilst you might have 1 million users come to your site, that might generate you $100,000 a month in advertising right now, if you're lucky. We want to make sure if we flip that model to the protocol, you can still make the same kind of revenue, even at this early stage in our ecosystem, without the scale. I mean, ultimately, we need to get more and more on, and obviously, therefore, you will generate more revenue in that way as well.
Yeah. So I guess I was sort of wondering more in respect to, I guess, getting on their platform. So like submitting apps to Apple with certain processes in the background. I know
Right,
Google's
yeah.
pushed back against extensions with certain cryptocurrency.
Yes, so I mean, we did see Google Chrome extensions say that they was banning all mining apps or mining extensions on their platform, and that's probably a sensible decision because I don't think that people were asking for consent. Two things: we're asking for consent 100% of the time. We're completely transparent. We're completely ethical in that. Also, we're going to have to do some analysis on how much of this, how much of your computer resources we're actually using. And then we're going to have to create dialogue with ad block companies as well, because we're hopeful that they're not going to block. But yeah, there could be a time where the likes of Google and Apple are gatekeepers to app developers doing that. But it's really, there's no line in the sand with respect to it. And we're hopeful because we're not mining, we're just doing a proof of work on the IOTA Tangle, and that's where the data's stored, that it won't be batched together in one big lump. So we'll see. And I don't think, in the short term, I don't think our app developers are going to be shouting from the rooftops that they're actually embedding it. So in the short term, it probably won't be picked up. We'll go from there.
So that was going to be my next question, actually. It's a perfect segue. So if I were to visit a website like a publisher or content provider that implemented the Oyster protocol and it were doing its job successfully in the background, would I notice any difference in the performance of the website, or would I notice any difference whatsoever?
No, not. I mean, I'm with. No, not really, because if you think about it, if you went to that website and weren't running the protocol, you'd no doubt be running like video ads and banner ads on that site anyway, and those use resources all the time too. So we're the idea is that the resources we use are no more than serving the ads in the first place. So again, we're hopeful that will back out, and we're going to do as the ecosystem grows, we'll have to be providing analysis to end users around that and educating them on what is actually going to be costing. I mean, you obviously know about Brave.com. I mean, Brave and BAT, which is a basic attention token. You know, right now that all that is doing is saying, hey, if we block all these ads over the course of the year, because we've blocked these ads, it's going to save you like $250 of resources in electricity. Now, you know, they've done some loose approximation of what an ad, you know, 160 kilobyte ad would use in your resources, how many ads on a page, how many pages you might visit. But all they're doing is by blocking that ad, you're going to save electricity. Well, with us, you know, we're saying, well, that electricity remained the same, but now that money's going straight to the publisher, and you're not having to see these annoying ads. So there is a trade-off. I mean, we are going to be asking for consent in that way, but you can see right now with GDPR and the general data protection rules that have come out, that everyone's asking for consent on something, and it's really quite vague as to what you're consenting to. We're hopeful that we can be really clear, but we're mindful as well there's a large number of people that, you know, might be skeptical, but you know, in the early stages, the sites that we'll be running, we believe that we should get 50 to 60% opt-in.
Yeah, no, I like the model too, and you definitely have an upper hand in one category moving forward, that being that with all these companies that are probably bombarding your inbox with all these updates to their privacy policies, you don't really know what to trust because you don't know if they're just doing that to be in compliance with the regulations. But you as a new company moving forward, at least as something that's not widely adopted yet and in its beta stage, then you have that privilege of having been open and transparent from the get-go.
Yeah, correct. I mean, as well, if you think about it, you know, there's all these emails coming out that we've updated our privacy policy, but still, all the people that have got you on the spam list, they're not going to be sending you emails that they're GDPR compliant. So, you know, what's going to be left over is they're still going to get as much revenue as before. So it's not really helping resolve that issue. And on the same token, you know, I think someone is trying to do some kind of class action right now, I think in one of the European countries, where they're saying that Google and Facebook are not GDPR compliant because they're saying that if you want to opt out or don't give consent, they're not allowing you to use the site at all, which it's forced. It's like a dark pattern. It's forced intent. So I think there was someone trying to say there's an $8.8 billion class action could be put in place after day one with respect to Facebook and Google, because they're not GDPR compliant at all. Their data is all over the place and they rely on it, and they won't allow anyone else to use that data, and they won't allow you to actually take control of it. And if you do want control of it, they won't allow you to use their sites. So it's
and if they make either choice, they're pretty screwed.
Well, because they're so big, they think they can get away with it. And literally, you know, Europe is pretty good at trying to break up these monopolies. It did a reasonable job at Microsoft, you know, in the 90s when it was trying Internet Explorer. And I think there's been fines last year for Google in the way that it prefers its own shopping listings than anyone else's shopping listings, and they got fined 1.5 billion euros for that. But I mean, these are tiny amounts for companies the size of Google and Facebook. So they're almost like eating up these fines. It's a bit like the banking industry eats up fines because it knows it's generating more profit than the fine. And at the end of the end user is none the wiser anyway. So after GDPR and all the dust settles, I think the end user experience will be exactly the same. You know, it'll be nothing, and I'll be interested to see if any of the EU actually do start to fine companies, because you would have thought that by now that they would have found loads of people foul of this, and that they would be talking about who's not compliant and why.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of another question I had for you, especially, and you probably have some special insight into this, considering you've kind of served as a gateway between UK, Australia, and the US for a lot of brand introduction internationally. So what happens moving forward with the GDPR? Because a lot of these companies like Facebook, YouTube, Google, Amazon, they were all started in the U.S. where the structure of kind of internet rights versus the rights of the company are kind of tilted toward the company and the corporate side. But whereas in the European Union, like you were saying, they're a lot more likely to favor the consumer. So how do you think going forward, companies like that are going to be able to balance such a dichotomy?
Well, I just think that they've basically said that they're not going to, they think that compliance means if you've got to consent to our cookie rules, or you don't use the platform. That's uncompliant from my understanding of the regulation. But they're hanging it out there. They're like, well, we're going to still make billions of dollars. Come and find us, and if they've got any sort of balls about them, we'll see how it pans out. But I just think that in the end, the regulation will be way too weak. I mean, you can see almost every year, it's literally every year for the last 6 years, Mark Zuckerberg apologizing for something that Facebook's done. He's like a naughty child, but yet he's still getting away with it, and there's still no regulation. So, on the reverse side, there's potentially 50 million investors in cryptocurrency globally. And yet all we ever hear about is regulation and rogue agents and scam. But, these big tools or these big publishers like Google and Facebook, they've been doing it for years and getting away with it because of the size and the revenue. There's been huge issues with tax, right? So they sit in countries like Dublin and don't pay any tax. I think over here in Australia, Google pays less than 6 or 7% tax. And yet it says it doesn't actually, it barely bills any revenue in Australia because it bills it all in Dublin. And these kind of loopholes and unregulated global marketplaces, we need to get more sophisticated in the way we look after end users. And it's the same with the banking system, to be honest. HSBC, rigging LIBOR, these are huge, huge global problems, but yet countries are not really able to take control of these businesses or control them in any way, shape, or form. But the people that are benefiting are the shareholders, and that's fundamental.
I think I might disagree a little bit just on the point about Facebook, because I think seeing Zuckerberg at that congressional testimony, and then if you sort of look into his financials, he's actually moved all of his money out of his private accounts and into a 501c organization. Yeah, so it's an organization that essentially gives him and his wife full control still, but doesn't keep it under his name, which to me seems like he's expecting to get sued pretty badly, and he's liquidating a lot of his shares.
But it also makes him look really philanthropic. We'll
Right.
put all this
Yeah,
money
Yeah,
make that-
exactly. It's very
that
smart.
fund.
and we'll use this trust fund, or a tiny percentage, to do good causes. But meanwhile, you can't tax that trust fund at standard rate. And if you come after us, I'm just trying to do good from the world. So, he's got some very clever advisors around him telling him exactly what to do. And in some of the questions he gets asked at those really shows that the policymakers have no real clue as to what's happening. The fact that he was asked, how does Facebook make money? He's come on. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, they asked him to install a button so users could see their data. He's like, yeah, just go to settings.
And even if they could see it, they wouldn't even know what it is. It's like it's going to be probably terabytes of data.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think these companies they may be in for something that they didn't expect, because they've been trying to play this two-sided game for a long time.
But they've got such good lobbying. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think that any government's really going to be able to out-lobby Google or Facebook, and it's almost within the advertising in itself. Google specifically, and Facebook as well, they've been lobbying against all the traditional medias like radio, advertising, and all that for so many years. They're so good. The amount of money they spend in that area in their marketing of how quantifiable or everything they produce is. It's really interesting. It's not based on anything other than their own research and their own data, and it serves themselves and themselves primarily.
Yeah, it does seem, though, maybe in the course of the past 10 years, this is probably the most upset I've seen people about these companies. So I think now they're losing a lot of their actual customer base, but they just don't really have anywhere else to go. So I think they're losing, the cultural battle, which I think is even more important than the regulatory battle in the long run. So they're looking for somewhere else to go, some other way to do things, and I think they're more willing now than ever. They just need that place to go, and it seems like Oyster could certainly be that on the advertising front. I was just gonna ask, as far as I guess monetization. So say if I was, you mentioned earlier you're gonna try and match the earnings that people are making for ads. So I was wondering if I'm someone who's visiting a website and I have a gaming computer with three GPUs in it, because I love playing Fortnite on Steam
Yeah.
all day. Am I gonna get some sort of proportional reward for that, or I'm just giving
Or
more
the
to
end
the?
user. So yeah, we've been
Yes.
thinking about how to give value to the end user. So we're not saying we're doing this, but if you think about it, if we created a browser or some way of running an app in the background, then maybe the end user can just run this themselves and still interact with the internet as normal, but then they can be generating Perl because they'd be using their computer residually in the background for proof of work on IOTA. So it has. We have been toying with this. I mean, Bruno Bloch, our founder, that wasn't his original intention, but you can see that there are so many different ways that this could be used. So it doesn't mean to say that it'd be reliant on the publisher to give the protocol. We could create a little app that someone could download on their phone, that they switch it on, and they could be generating Perl because they're consistently using their phone's CPU and GPU to support that outside of their normal browsing. So
That'd be
that's
really
something that
cool.
we have been toying with. And again, it's not because I guess we've been developing so fast, the technology, it's not something that we've put on the roadmap per se, but I think that there is an opportunity there to go direct to the end user and say, hey, we can pay you for blocking ads, and we can pay you in
Yeah.
Perl. And it won't, and surely you're using AdBlock anyway, which is great. Now we're going to pay you to do it. That's got to be even better.
Right, because the value they gain is already there in that they're not being bombarded with all these different crazy ads. They don't know how they've been tracked to be served. And then in the future,
Yes.
you said you take 50%, right? So you could always just cut into your own share and
Yeah,
give back
yeah.
to the end user.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, you think about it as well. If there's 600 million people using AdBlock right now, but most of those AdBlock companies don't really have any monetization methodology. Maybe AdBlock Plus does because they use Easy List, and you can whitelist. So Google pay AdBlock Plus to whitelist their ads. Facebook pay AdBlock Plus to whitelist their ads as well. So they're not really getting a free or an
Yeah, it's the
ad-free
same
experience.
problem.
But maybe a company like uBlock or something could adopt the technology, or we could build AdBlock ourselves and offer it out and say, once you use our technology and you provide an Ethereum address, we can be dropping Perl token into that for every minute you're online with it on. And I think that would be really interesting too. I mean, Brave has got 5 million users downloading their mobile app or their web browser right now, but those users are not really earning anything other than airdrop BAT, and out of goodwill. We would be actually doing it as part of the protocol. So yeah, I'm intrigued to develop on that over time for sure. And I think that users as well, it could be a really great entry for end users who are using AdBlock to get into owning cryptocurrency in their own right without actually having to get fiat money out of their pocket, or in fact go through any of the semi-complicated wallets and sort of exchanges to buy it in their own right as well.
So you briefly touched upon your airdrop. So I was hoping you could explain a little bit about how you guys went about the fundraising process and why you chose the avenues you did.
Okay, so we'll step back. So maybe in about I first became aware of Oyster Protocol in about November time when they were doing the ICO, and because we didn't have huge amounts of marketing behind us, we have a very small team. we weren't able to generate the millions of dollars, let's say, that EOS have generated or IOTA in fiat to back the company. But yet, so it was a very small ICO in terms of fiat, and then it grew significantly because of the sort of spike over Christmas time, and then I got involved in the project there. So we're currently funding the whole project out of our token Pearl. And I think we own about 30% of the Pearl in supply, and that's going to fund. And we're pegging the price of Pearl, so one Pearl will equal 64 gigabytes of data for 1 year for uploading. So, and you know, right now I think Pearl's trading at around about 50 cents USD. So it's really cheap when you compare it to even Google Drive, for example. So that's a pegged utility token. But if you think about it, every time that someone's using the protocol, they become a web node. And if we can get many web nodes using it, then we create this whole topography where we have a mesh net of web nodes users. Now, our founder Bruno, and I've seen a lot of this as well, is that with the respects of that, this meshnet can also be used as communication tool to do a decentralized internet. And Shell, our airdrop token that we airdropped in April to anyone who had Pearl, that's going to be something where you know, DApp providers or developers can build on top of this topography and use it for communications, and Shell will be the fuel or the electricity for that communication tool. Now, what's happening, we did it as an airdrop because obviously we don't really have any development on that right now either, so it's not like we could do another ICO and fund it. We're going to be focusing on building the protocol and taking that as far as we can before we flip a team into developing Shell further. And again, you will see in our roadmap over the next 12 months that happening. But right now, what I'm seeing in the space is because of the fear about regulation and tax, that literally almost most ICOs are not even available to US citizens currently. And so the only way that maybe US citizens can get involved in the ICOs is already owning, you know, Ethereum tokens. And then if to create mass distribution, you airdropped your new ICO to everyone who had an Ethereum wallet, you get some scale without the fear of tax implication or SEC regulation and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I'm seeing more of that happening in the space, but I'm not so, because I'm not based in the US, I'm not sure how that's going to back out. And I'm not sure even in Australia, cryptocurrency is considered an asset and it's subject to capital gains tax just in the same way as buying a stock, for example. But I'm not sure it's considered quite like that in the US.
Yeah,
and I think
that can get very expensive very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite. I think it's a precarious position right now. No one really knows how it's going to back out, and no one really knows how it's going to be actually audited as well. So, you know, for us, airdropping the Shell token was a sense of loyalty to say, hey, we've got something in the pipeline over the next 5 years that we're going to be developing, but because you're loyal right now with Pearl, we want you to get in from at the ground. And right. it was a good way to distribute that, you know, and we're currently trading, Shell's currently being traded, but we aren't really developing anything with that technology in as we speak at the moment.
But the more people that use Shell and Pearl, then the more hypothetical, or like it's the less hypothetical it becomes. You can have that kind of distributed network of data sharing, kind of like a distributed Dropbox then, right? Which would be really cool to offer in the future.
Yeah, so Pearl will give us the distributed Dropbox. Now that, I mean, I think that we're going to be able to upload files of 25 megabytes onto IOTA Tangle, which is pretty much, you know, global first in what we're trying to do there. And the speeds that we're getting are quite incredible considering the speeds of Bitcoin or Ethereum. I mean, the technology behind IOTA and the thinking is so smart that the proof of work is done by one. If we do one transaction, we have to verify 2 others, and there's 0 cost, and it should be able to scale as many broker nodes in the Tangle as possible. So it's a really fascinating spin on. Well, for me, it's almost like 2nd generation blockchain, because blockchain's got all of these issues with the speed, with the scale, with the cost of the transaction, with the size of the blockchain. And I think that IOTA goes some way into taking all of those negative aspects away and offering the ability to scale. And if you think about IOTA, it's not just devices like my computer, my phone. It's any device that has connectivity. So, a fridge, a smart TV, chips inside of other devices, electronic devices as well, can all contribute to the IOTA Tangle. And then Shell will be able to use this kind of mesh net to do this communication. And of course, that again will be unregulated outside of ISPs, which are filters to some degree and gatekeepers of information, and also they have their back doors wide open for governments as well to review in that sort of respect too. So I'm really excited about what Shell can do. However, I'm not focused on it right now in the short term.
That absolutely makes sense. So are there any other companies within the industry that you're paying a lot of attention to that you think, will be interesting going forward, or might be, good to build Oyster with?
Well, it was more like the similar types of companies when you asked the question. So again, I mentioned Steam, because obviously Steam is micropayments. I talk about it more and more with my sort of community on LinkedIn, that definitely there is a problem with micropayments right now, whether they're bulky, whether the end user really wants to partake, how's the transaction done, is it really worth getting your credit card out for when it's like 1 or 2 cents. So in that respect, Steam is really interesting, but I just don't think it goes far enough. And then there is, as I said, there's no one else offering this alternative revenue stream. So we've got Kind Ads with Neil Patel. He's offering a way to do decentralized advertising via push notification, but they're still doing advertising. And similar with Brave.com, the Mozilla Foundation, the CEO's gone and built that, but he's still going to be pushing ads. So I haven't seen any other project offering an alternative revenue stream to publishers that doesn't involve mining someone's computer, and that can and that users are likely to consent to. So that's the really exciting thing, and I'm just hopeful that that we can pull it off quickly, because no doubt there will be people thinking about this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's
and I mean,
for
it
sure.
seems like right now is a great time to do it, because a lot of content creators are getting demonetized. They're getting, sort of pushed off of their platforms. And so there are going to be a lot of people looking for ways to monetize their audiences without hurting their brand at the same time. And I think that's the balance that a lot of these publishers are trying to maintain.
Yeah.
And certainly, we talk to a lot of, I guess you could call them influencers or content creators, a lot of, the Instagram and the YouTube crowd. We grew up with a lot of those kids.
Yeah.
And, they're not very business savvy. They're not very techy, and they get, some great sponsors with sponsored products and such. But the best thing for them really is to be able to get paid without having to essentially pimp out their brand to whoever will pay their bills.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other side, with respect to data storage, there's Filecoin, which is raised significant amount of money privately out of Silicon Valley. I think it was a Y Combinator project, and they're also trying to do the interplanetary file system. Protocol Labs. It's quite interesting but they've not released any product. I don't think they're saying that there's something coming towards the end of the year. I mean, there's huge amount of investment in that project, but whether it's got any use cases, right now is limited. And then there's Siacoin or Siatech that's doing decentralized storage. But again, it's cost prohibitive. It's not anonymous. And again, Filecoin's not anonymous. Then also Storage, which is not decentralized. It's not free data download, and there is you have to sign up. So again, there's no anonymity there. So we're kind of unique on the data storage side as well. We have had discussions as well whether website publishers could use a decentralized storage for similar to the S3 bucket on Amazon Web Services to give again encrypted control for images and for messaging, and we're speaking to a couple of encrypted messaging services about how they can use it in that manner as well. So that it could almost be that they would be their own sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, because they could be paying to store data, but the money that they're using to pay to store data is the money that they're earning for end users using the platform. So it just goes in a beautiful circle like
nice
that.
Feedback
and it could be cost neutral, therefore, for their hosting, which, over time, if you've got hundreds of thousands or even millions of users, hosting is expensive. Even in the cloud, it's expensive, and it's completely centralized.
So that then almost begs the question, do you ever envision a future in which the end users are competing with their own phones for resources? So you'll have like a bunch of these protocols running in the background to the point where you actually notice the difference and are trying to compete for resources?
Well, I mean, if say that you wanted to use your phone to create revenue for yourself, there's already a few, tools like that. So one, I think, in a very different way, it's kind of not a resource level, but it will show you an ad when you pick your phone up and you unlock your phone, you see this ad, and that's contributing to your phone bill. So in that sort of respect, if you've got multiple people using technology to try to use the resources, they could potentially compete. And how your phone handles that, I've got no idea at this stage. But right now, when your phone, I don't think you can actually see how much of your phone's resources are being used and for what very easily, like you can in your desktop. Which again, it could happen, but it's a bit like if you've got your own wallet online for storing cryptocurrency, you've got to take control of it. You've got to understand it. It's not just like 2 clicks and you're in. You've got to make sure that you control what's going to be used. And I would expect the same thing for the end user in that respect.
Yeah, I completely agree. It won't be a problem for a significant period of time, because as an app developer, Apple does provide you at least some basic statistics for how many resources you're using of the system, and most of the apps are not going to be using 1 to 5% of the resources. So like all of your usage is really this flat line, and you have some spikes occasionally when you're playing games or like when Mark's playing Fortnite. But for the majority of the time, there's really no usage at all. So I feel like something like these, at least, and a bunch of cousins of this, could be running at the same time with no problem, at least right now.
Yeah, and I'd expect if we built this, then as people, if it was in an app and we were going to pay the end user in Perl to use the technology, that the way it would work is that it would identify when the end user is using more resources, like the phone was active versus when the phone was inactive in the pocket. And, out of the course of a day, 50% at least of your phone is inactive, and that's when it could be really maximizing revenue. And whether that would mean it could offset the whole of your phone bill over time would be quite interesting too.
That would be very interesting. So with that, I think we've gotten through all the questions I have right now. Will, is there anything else
just
you want to touch upon?
For curious listeners out there, definitely head out to oysterprotocol.com. I was on the website just a couple hours ago, just checking everything out. I love the branding. Just everything's really harmonious, from the Oyster shell to Oyster Pearl, and all the logo design is something that's really great from a visual perspective, and the technology is really cool. So go check that out if you will.
Yeah, and join our Telegram community. We've got a really active community, and they're not just speculators like you get with most communities.
Yeah.
We spend significant amount of time and money, and I want to take my hat off to the whole team that basically manages the community and building the technology. They're doing an awesome job because we've managed to take out most of the FUD and speculators and put them in a group for trading. And we're really focused on, you know, where this technology is going to go from a use case, and we want to share knowledge. And I think that's one of the main differentiators with our Telegram community than with most others. You know, the people that are involved in there actually believe in the product. They don't like adverts, and they can't wait to actually see us live.
Yeah, and we're going to make sure we...
Yeah. Well, there's hopefully hundreds of millions of people in the same boat.
Yeah. So we're going to make sure we get all those links in the description for anyone who wants to check it out. And hopefully we'll play it around a little bit with the platform they have now, and we'll let you guys know how it is. And we want to thank you, Chris, for making the time to talk to us. This has been great, and we're always going to be happy to have you guys on if you have anything new and exciting to talk about.
Yeah, sure. We'd love to come back and say how mainnet has been going, some of the use cases, and when we're ready as well to give some case studies about how much revenue it's generating, what the CPM rates can be, and how, you know, how websites can switch to this model. And as I say, I want to just reiterate a big hats off to the team. I mean, within the space of literally 4 months, we've gone from 0 lines of code to be able to produce this as mainnet as of today. That's taken, you know, people working 24/7 around the clock.
That's incredible.
It's incredible, the effort from all of them. I'm really grateful that I'm on a part of the team, but also I'm really grateful that they're also on the journey as well.
Yeah, well, we're excited to follow along and see how things
Agreed.
go.
Going from 0 to 1, it takes a lot out of you. So good luck to you in the
blood,
future,
sweat,
and
and
thanks
tears.
for
Yeah,
thanks for
the hard part
coming on.
hopefully
Yeah.
is over. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back soon with more, and we'll leave some links for you in the description so you can check out Oyster on your own time. With that, we'll see you next time.